South and Southwest region, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, Maldives, Minister of State for Finance, Sri Lanka, Secretary General SAARC, UN officials, Secretary Planning, Chairperson, Board of Governors, SDPI, distinguished delegates from South and Southwest Asian countries, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all the UNESCAP participants from Southwest Asian countries, Iran, Turkey, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, India, and Maldives to Pakistan. I'm hoping that my colleagues and friends from SDI will be providing best hospitality to all of you. Thank you so very much for having me as UNESCAP's 6th South and Southwest Asia at this forum. Sustainable Development Agenda and South-South cooperation are globally agreed blueprints for peace and prosperity of the people and the planet. As the world is passing through unusual times, the innovative form of knowledge and experience exchange, technology transfer, emergency response, and recovery of livelihood and economies among the nations in the global South, particularly South and Southwest Asia, is of immense importance than ever. People and planet nowadays are going through persistent challenges posed by constant change and disruptions caused by geopolitics and economics, climate change, conflicts, pandemics, food and energy insecurities, high cost of living, shadows of a recession, rising poverty and inequality. Such disruptions have severely challenged the human development gains achieved so far by countries, including countries in South and Southwest Asia region. I said it at the High-Level Political Forum 2022 in New York, where we presented VNR 2022, that we are facing far more severe problem than COVID after Russia-Ukraine war. Supply chains are disrupted, wheat shortages have taken place, oil prices are higher, inflation is at unprecedented high level, and most of the developing countries are facing extreme balance of payment deficits. World helped developing countries in COVID, but during this crisis, the present crisis, which is not one of our own making, we did not ask Russia and Ukraine to go to war. There is rather more pressure on the developing world to reduce expenditures and increase taxation, to reduce fiscal deficits, depreciated exchange rates, and remove subsidies to offset the effects of the war that have been imposed on the global economy. Similarly, none of the developing countries flushed billions of dollars in subsidies during pandemic, which has caused record inflation today. I propose from this platform to have one voice of South, Southwest Asian and South and other developing countries, that during this crisis time, developing countries need a relief in terms of debt swaps, debt relief, debt rescheduling, to combat the extreme suffering that they are facing today. The global financial institutions need to provide longer-term concessionary loans at AAA rating, which means close to zero markup rate for 25 to 30 years, to help developing world build resilient economic, social, and environmental infrastructure that would help in accelerating the progress of development given by Sustainable Development Goals and mitigating the effects of climate disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, SDGs are encompassing phenomena. The principle of leaving no one behind entails inclusivity and reach out the furthest behind, The beauty of SDGs agenda is to include everyone, particularly for marginalized and vulnerable segments of the society. Given the great divergence across regions and countries in terms of development gains, economic recovery, access to cheap and long-term finance, innovation and technology transfer have further substantiated the urgency for scaling up efforts for integration of economic, social and environmental dimensions to attain desired higher level of human development. Based on the principle of equity, furthest behind first, we have started a new development initiative in the first phase with rupees 40 billion for the least developed districts in Pakistan. The major intervention is based on asset building, universal cash transfers, education, health, and clean energy. These are the low-hanging fruits that we need to work on to accelerate the progress of SDGs. I believe we are among the first countries, if not first, which adopted SDGs as a national development agenda and established 7 specialized SDG support units at the planning and development departments at the federal and provincial governments. And not to mention that the Vision 2025 that we launched in 2014 already proactively included the SDG agenda, which was formally launched in 2015. The parliamentary task forces were constituted both at federal and provincial levels to oversee and support legislation of SDGs and establish SDG secretariats in the National Parliament for oversight and effective coordination and support. In the first 3 years, the implementation picked up speed. However, COVID-19 has factually reverted development gains followed by floods and other global shocks. The pandemic emerged as a health emergency affecting the economic and human crisis of immense proportion that affected communities and countries across the globe. The people were kept locked and economic and livelihood activities were disrupted, leaving millions of workers without any work, pushing them into poverty and hunger and plunging the global economy into the worst recession since 1930s Great Depression. The governments across regions, including Pakistan's response, aimed at building forward better through a large, people-centered, inclusive, and sustainable relief and stimulus, with increasing focus on social protection and income stimulus. Efforts are still lagging with respect to green, inclusive, and gender-sensitive programming to address multiple and intersecting deprivations. Ladies and gentlemen, South and Southwest Asia represents 26% of the global population and 44.1% of Asia-Pacific region. The sub-region GDP contributes 5.7% of global output and 15% of Asia-Pacific region. South-Southwest Asia region has caused less than 9% of global greenhouse gas emissions and 16% of Asia-Pacific. The sub-region has the highest multi-dimensional poverty ratio, almost 30% among all the sub-regions. Countries in South and Southwest Asia, constituting little over a quarter of world population and over a third of world's extreme poor people, have been severely impacted. Millions have lost their jobs, poverty and inequality on rise, thus undermining the development gains so far made by South Asian countries, particularly towards achieving sustainable development goals. And let me say that, South Asia has a lot common with UN because we have many UNs in South Asia. Uneducated, unhealthy, unbankable, unemployed. So name any majority of them live in South Asia. But look at South Asia, one of the least integrated regions of the world. Today, regionalization is a major driver of development, whether economic or social. And South Asia cannot even host a summit from 2016. For last 6 years, we are not able to agree when to hold the SAARC summit. And with all respect, we are all South Asian countries and we owe it to our people that instead of fighting wars, we collectively fight war against poverty, illiteracy, and disease, and climate disasters. And the key to South Asian cooperation, I would say, is in the hands of India due to the geography of this region. No South Asian country except for Pakistan and Afghanistan mainly can trade with each other bypassing India. So my request to Indian friends is, if only India shows a heart 1/4 the size of its geography, the problems can be solved. The pandemic caused widespread socio-economic damages across countries as shrinking economies with loss of jobs and livelihood pushed millions more people in poverty. There has been an increase in inequality within countries as vulnerable and marginalized people across countries have been hit adversely. There is a mixed picture of SDG progress in South and Southwest Asia. Despite performing well in no poverty, Goal 1, South and Southwest Asia has the highest multidimensional poverty ratio among all other regions, sub-regions, 29.2%. In countries such as Pakistan and Bhutan, income poverty is relatively low, but multidimensional poverty is high, 38 and 37% respectively. South and Southwest Asia performed exceptionally well in providing electricity to people, which helped accelerate progress on affordable and clean energy, Goal 7. However, much more needs to be done to increase access and affordability of renewable energy and to also lessen the contribution of fossil fuels to protect our environments. This sub-region also made moderate progress on industry, innovation and infrastructure, Goal 9, mainly due to the rapid expansion of mobile network coverage and the volume of trade. However, this has come with increased carbon dioxide emissions from the manufacturing sector and a shrinking share of total manufacturing value added in production by medium and high-tech industry. The South and Southwest Asia sub-region has regressed in Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. This is one of the fastest urbanizing sub-regions of the world. The main areas that need urgent action to reverse negative trends are air pollution in cities and human and economic loss from disasters, without which the sub-region will not achieve the 2030 targets. The South and Southwest Asia is a dynamic region with some leading developing economies that are taking innovative initiatives to achieve SDGs. This forum will surely contribute to creating an environment of cooperation and learning of the best practices and implementation strategies to accelerate the progress. Capacity building through cooperation and hand-holding will allow the South and Southwest Asia region to grow together towards a more sustainable future. Rating SDGs targets through annual performance agreement across the whole spectrum of public sector, assessing individuals and ministries' performance. This would be replicated by other member countries for better outcomes and public service delivery. There are ample opportunities of learning and replication of SDGs implementation within South and Southwest Asia. The twinning program between Pakistan and Sri Lanka is one of the best examples for sharing knowledge and peer learning during VNR 2022 preparation. The program provided opportunities to both countries to share experiences, knowledge exchange, and learn from each other. Such a mechanism for boosting regional and bilateral coordination and cooperation for SDGs implementation should be rolled out further to all different areas and themes of SDGs implementation. Bilateral exchange of knowledge ideas and lessons learned could also help in strengthening country-level cross-cooperation and learning for SDGs implementation. Innovative ideas across SDGs goals can be replicated by establishing bilateral platforms for cooperation at program and project levels. International development partners can play a critical role in creating synergies and triangulation. Ladies and gentlemen, countries including Pakistan have been facing environmental hazards and risks, thus necessitating climate adaptation and disaster risk management. It is the biggest man-made natural disaster that we are experiencing today. Pakistan ranks among the top 10 countries worldwide most affected by climate change. With due cognizance of its vulnerability, particularly in the aftermath of recent floods in the country, the government of Pakistan played an instrumental role and a leading role in historic decision of COP27 to establish the Fund for Loss and Damage caused by climate-induced disasters. The dedicated Fund for Loss and Damage will address losses and damages in developing countries such as Pakistan and others, which are particularly vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. The consensus decision taken to this effect by the 27 COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, is a momentous achievement, especially for the Group of 77 in China, as the developing countries have been demanding such a fund for the past 30 years. The 2022 floods have shown Pakistan's high vulnerability to climate change despite contributing less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And also Maldives is here with us on the panel, which runs the risk of sinking in the rising water of sea. The scale of the disaster is unprecedented in Pakistan, exceeding the damage of the 2010 floods. Around 33 million people, that is 1 in 7, have been affected by the floods, including nearly 8 million displaced. Rain-induced floods, accelerated glacial melt and resulting landslides, hill torrents, flash floods, devastated millions of homes and key infrastructure, submerging entire villages and destroying livelihoods of millions of people. The preliminary estimates suggest that as a direct consequence of the floods, the national poverty rate will increase by 4% approximately, pushing between 8.4 to 9.1 million people into poverty. 94 districts are declared as calamity hit, accounting for more than half of all districts in the country. Out of the 25 poorest districts in the country, 19 were calamity affected. Total estimated cost of damages, loss, and needs is estimated at $46.4 billion. The disaster will have profound impact on lives and livelihoods. Preliminary estimates of the post-disaster need assessment suggest that the national poverty rate will increase by 3.7 to 4% points, pushing between 8.4 and 9.1 million into poverty, as I said, due to the consequence of this flood. Similarly, multidimensional poverty will increase by 5.9% points, meaning that an additional 1.9 million households will be pushed into non-monetary poverty. Beyond the national average, poverty in the province of Sindh would increase by between 8.9 to 9.7% points, and in the province of Balochistan between 7.5 to 7.7 percentage points. The recovery and reconstruction needs are likely to exceed Pakistan's available resources to rebuild itself in a sustainable and resilient manner. On August 30th, the government of Pakistan and the United Nations jointly launched the 2022 Pakistan Floods Response Plan, which highlighted the main humanitarian needs and outlined an action plan to respond to the immediate needs of the people. And we hope to organize on January 10th a conference of Friends of Pakistan for building a climate resilient Pakistan to help us raise funds to carry out resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction of the country's infrastructure to mitigate, not only rebuild the damaged infrastructure, but also to build a resilient infrastructure that can withstand future climate disasters. Ladies and gentlemen, it is widely pointed out in the recent UNDP report that the great finance divide has been a key driver of divergence in recovery across countries. With additional millions of people in poverty due to COVID, the divergence caused severe setback to SDGs implementation in many countries. With scarce resources and stifled flow of funds into the developing countries, this finance divide is going to widen further, thus would harm implementation of SDGs. With low investment to GDP ratio, Pakistan being a net importer of funds, however, due to multiplicity of reasons, access to long-term and cheap financing are becoming scarce. Pakistan offers multi-billion-dollar investment opportunities in sectors aligned with the SDGs, the sectors ranging from transport and logistics, renewables and alternative energy, healthcare, education and technology and communication and finance. CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, also offers enormous opportunities in trade and transport logistics, skill development and developing regional value chains with Western China and Central Asia. Pakistan is committed to enhancing its social development performance and allocate funds to improve social outcomes. It has also proposed that a $1 billion SDG financing pilot program to demonstrate sustainable and innovative partnerships for shared prosperity, stability and development in order to achieve the promise of Agenda 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no denying the fact that the climate change, pandemics and geopolitics have caused uptick in economic risks in the form of plummeting output, supply disruptions and other climate change related factors such as drought, floods and extreme heat caused crop yield to fall and world commodity prices to shoot up. In this context, the regional platforms such as consortium of South-Southwest Asian countries require collective wisdom and efforts. The cross-country externalities impacting developing nations need to be addressed with